learning requires two things: to know and to remember, or to retain. And retention is almost as important as knowing. So therefore, the one idea, and that's the beauty of Mishnah, is that the ideas or the halachas are presented as facts, ideas, not as solutions to a problem that was offered in the Gemara. It's a very big rule, and my feeling is that's one of the reasons why Rabbi Adi Yosef, other than the fact that he had tremendous memory and he was always chazering, clearly those tremendous, is that any Gemara, any sukkah in the Gemara, as you remember the definition of a sukkah, the total treatment that is given over to the resolution of a problem. So there's always a central idea. Then there's the treatment process, which is a shapavitaya, which of course is the debate itself, the argumentation. And then you have the maskana, which is a solution. So the idea is that the solution is not just a solution, it has to become a fact. So what they try to do, and I understand Rabbi Yashiv trying to do this also, is what is a case in which this solution will be part of? And then there actually be cases. They would look for a case in this, and that this maskana would be the principle of that case. So therefore the solutions, the maskanas of the Gemara, became a yediyah, and therefore the mind remembers yediyahs. Anyway, Mishnayos obviously offers that. Okay, so that's number one. That's idea number one. Number two.
What do you mean that Mishnayos offer that?
No, Mishnayos says yediyahs.
Oh, so I mean, it's
the facts.
It's like maskonos.
Well, in a certain sense, yeah. It's not a maskana because no problem was presented. So it's not a solution of anything. There's no problem presented.
You don't get stuck in a solution. It's a fact that you could use right away for other cases.
It's a fact, which is very important. I'm telling you something which is very important, yediyahs. The second thing is that, okay, we need a roadmap. Like everything else in life, you need a roadmap. What's a roadmap? A roadmap is a series of objectives that you need to look at when you learn anything.
Consciously.
Well, consciously. Once it becomes so good, you can do it in your sleep. So what's the roadmap? So let's take a look. What's the roadmap? If you recall, well, first thing you have to ask yourself, of course, is what's Mishnayos? What is Mishnayos? And the answer is, fundamentally, it's a collection of halachas. Right? Yeah, a collection of halachas. That's what Mishnayos really is. So therefore, the first thing I think would be good is what is the objectives of halacha? Mishnayos is a collection of halachas, divided into paragraphs and chapters and tractates. What is a halacha? What's the objectives of a halacha? I think I had gone to, previously, but anybody remember what they were? When you look at a given halacha, what are you looking? What?
How can we not remember?
Okay.
There's so many shoes.
So my problem.
Me?
Take up the challenge. Well, listen. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to. I don't want to put on the spot.
No, it's the. We have situation and we have
Let's use its formal language. Yeah. Every halacha will consist fundamentally of 8 areas or 8 categories. It's very important. This will separate you as the men from the boys, If you know this, then whenever you look at a halacha, you immediately know there's at least 8 things you need to do. 1, the case. What exactly is the situation that we are talking about? And that has to be precise. Because if you vary certain elements of the case, well, guess what? You're going to vary the other aspects of the case. So you need to know what exactly is this case. 1. 2, what's the conduct? I call it conduct. What it really is, the din. What is the law? Din is, that's the translation. What exactly is the din of this case? Every case has a din. What exactly is the din? Well, how many dinim are there? There are an infinite amount of cases. But how many dinim really are there? Right? There's chayiv potter, osam mutter. Chayiv potter is what? Chayiv, obligated, potter, exempt. Osam mutter, forbidden or permitted. Kosher, posel, fit or unfit. Tomei toho, he's pure he's tomei toho, he's contaminated, spiritually that is. And he's uncontaminated, or the absence of contamination, which is what Torah really is. And number 5, it is yotza lo yotza. He fulfilled his obligation or he didn't fulfill his obligation. He discharged it or didn't discharge it. That's another way of saying it. And those are basically the dinim that will apply to every case. Yeah, maybe there's one or two things left out, but basically that's it. So you have case conduct. That's the 2 immediate things you need to look for. And that, it doesn't mean you always figure it out immediately. But we have a roadmap here. We have a map of ideas. Okay? Next thing. The third thing. The third idea is the most important statement that explains the halacha. Actually, the word halacha means the combination of case and conduct. That's really what a halacha is. Many people use it in the sense of what's the halacha, what's the din. But technically, it's halacha is what was the case and what was the din that refers to that case. Okay? So we have case situation, then we have conduct or din, and together they comprise a halacha. The third idea is called the principle. It means what is the idea that governs this din to that case? Why is this case chayav or potter? It's the why, what's called the din, the principle, the yisoid, the tam, the rationale. All of those terms mean the same. It doesn't make a difference. The key idea is what is the underlying idea, right, that determines or is responsible for or governs the din to the case. Very important. Once you understand that, then you understand exactly what's going on. Not only that, but you could see similar cases. You say, wait a minute, this principle is also in this case, so therefore they must have the same din. You see? That's how you, what's called meven dover mitoch dover. That you can understand one thing from another. Because you see a common principle, even though the cases may be different. Very important idea. The yisoid, or the rationale, or the tam. Why is this the din to this case? Okay? That's number 3. Number 4. Well, we understand what the din is to a given case. Fine. But what in a case is essential? It's called the essential conditions. What is the essential ideas in a given case? And that's why the din. But if you change some of the conditions, well, obviously, then you may not have the same halacha. Maybe potter.
Why is that different in situation?
What?
Why is that different in situation?
Well, a situation is just a general description, whereas essential conditions is an examination, more specifically, or more
Would it be
detailed.
like he shook lulav and he shook a lulav that was stolen?
Yeah, that would be a condition, So the fact that you must own the lulav, right, is an essential condition for what?
Shaking lulav.
No, not shaking the lulav.
So being yotze.
No, you have to be much more detailed, more specific. Always
to be
think, try to be
the
more
mitzvah of
specific.
picking up a lulav.
No, that's too general. No.
One more shot. To be kind, what the Torah says.
No, you're saying it all the same way. No. The fact that you need to own your lulav, right, is therefore makes this object a qualified object in the mitzvah. You see the difference? We're not talking about it because the mitzvah of lulav has 2 dinim here, right? It has the object itself, the lulav. And then it has the performance or the action with that object. Together, a qualified object, right? With a proper operation or action.
You did
the mitzvah. You see, you're one step ahead.
Right.
But you have to think much more rigorously in order to begin to what's called to see the differences and so on. Very important. Okay, so we have case, conduct, principle, essential conditions. 4. 5 is the concept of, well, how do we know that this is the case, or rather this is the din of that case? That's called its derivation. From whence do we derive? It's not the principle. Remember, that's not the principle. Derivation simply means, how do we know that this is the conduct to that case? You see? Where do we derive it from? And the Gemara's expression would be minohan imile. From where are these words said? Which means, what's the derivation? Okay? And under derivation, you have the following subcategories. If you thought it was getting simpler. You have to know this right away, but after a while it becomes second nature. You just know, So the first idea of derivation is called, who's the author? Who's the one who said this? Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yochanan, who said it? And that's important. You want to know who the author is, because sometimes you may have a contradiction between the same author, so then you wonder what's going on, and so on. Also, you want to know who the author is. When did he live? And so on. You don't want to know when did this take place, and so on. I'll tell you want to know the author, whatever. The second idea is, what's your authority? This law, this case that has this conduct, this halacha, what's your authority? Is it min ha-Torah, midrabanan? It's called the authority. Well, or minhag. Yeah, there are three kinds of authorities. Is it min ha-Torah? Is it midrabanan? Or is it a minhag? You see? That's very important. The concept of authority. Wow. The concept of authority is very important. Boy, is this sophisticated. The concept of an authority is very important. You know what I'm saying? Actually, can you write it down? Once I know I got it.
It's a nice handwriting.
Who's that nice handwriting? I mean, I'm just dictating it, but actually, it would be interesting if somebody wrote it down and you take a picture of that.
You already took a picture.
You do that.
Oh,
You have a
okay.
nice handwriting?
No.
I mean,
no.
okay,
We'll just write down.
I'm honest. You want to do it? I'll do it. Now, under authority, remember, under derivation, what do you want to know? You have 6 ideas. Remember, under the objective called derivation of this halacha. Remember, the halacha is a case, and it's a conduct, and has a principle, and in the case is essential conditions. Now we have the 5th category called derivation, and under that, 1, who is the author of this halacha? 2, what is the authority? Is it min ha-Torah, midrabanan? Is it minhag? What's its authority? That's very important, because clearly if something's min ha-Torah, it's a lot different than it's midrabanan. It's like sofik. Sofik deraisa l'chumra. A doubt in a biblical law, as they say, is l'chumra, whereas in a rabbinical law, in midrabanan, it's the kula. So obviously authority is critical. And then minhag has its own laws and so on. Okay, so we have that, right? Now, if it's min ha-Torah, we now proceed with the next list, right? So we have author, authority. If it's min ha-Torah, 1, what is the derivational method used to derive this halacha? How many are there?
13.
Well, there's 13 according to Rabbi Shmuel. But if you look in the back of the Gemara Brochos, Rabbi Yossi Haglili, it's a brisa, there are 32. But you have to include riboy, achariboy, and gematria, and so on. There's a lot more, So there's at least 32 derivational methods. Now, we don't do that anymore. We don't concern ourselves basically with derivational methods, which is a mistake. In Chazal, the Yisik Gemara, there was Gzer Shava. They were concerned with what type of Gzer Shava is and so on. Kal Choymer, all kinds of things. Because each one of these things have rules and regulations, when you could apply it. There's farm written on this. I think the Mabit wrote a whole sefer on the rules of the Midas, Lamed Beis Midas, Shatur Nidreshes Bahem. Anyway, so you want to know the derivational method. 1, 2. Well, if it's a derivational method and it's min ha-Torah, it's got to come from a pasuk, unless it's halacha mishmi Sinai. So what's the source pasuk? That's another idea. Okay, that's 4, 5. What's its tzivui form? Is it a lav? Because the Torah could have said every tzivui in different forms. It could have said it as a lav. Don't, as a maaseh, do, you see. So there are 2 forms of tzivui, and that's also important because they are halachas. What happens if you have a din, a halacha, that's written as a law, as aseh, and what happens if they come together, and so on. There's gedarim to that. And then the last one would be frequency. How often is this law repeated? there you are. If it's midrabanan, then you have another series of categories. When was it promulgated? First of all, is it a takana or gzera? A gzera is a lav, don't do, whereas a takana is do. So what's the form of the rabbinical enactment, so to speak? Is it gzera or takana? You see, that's the first thing you question, right? Then who? Which Bezdin did it? Bezdin of Moshe Rabbeinu, whatever, the Bezdin of Shlomo Melech, which Bezdin? 3. When was that Bezdin? Now, how far back do we go? That's very important. Why? Because Ein Bezdin, you can't mevatla previous unless you have God b'minyan and b'chokhmah, and so on. So clearly, time is a very important factor. So that's which Bezdin. And then another idea is the precipitating event. Why did Chazal make this gzera? Was there an event that was called precipitated or initiated the creation of this gzera? And many times the Gemara will bring down this specific event, and from that event, that's why they did
What's
this.
precipitate?
Who?
Precipitate, that's causative?
Precipitate means to cause.
Not cause.
Yeah, to initiate, to set into motion. It's a fancy word. Yeah, what's the precipitating event? What happened? And so on. So we have those, right? And then of course we have the that would be under the Tom. But anyway, why did even if there was an event, there are gzeros which have nothing to do with an event. Yet Chazal have their rules and regulations as to why they would have initiated the gzer and so on. Okay, so there you are. So you have those Rabbanan. There you have the whole concept of derivation. If it's the whole series of objectives, if there's an idea of derivation. Okay, this is called analysis. These are the ideas where you analyze something. You know what I'm saying? You analyze. So you look at case, the conduct, the principle, the essential conditions, and then you would look at its derivation. This is what's called analysis. To analyze means to break down. But then there are things you want to do which is called synthesis. You want to compare it to others, to other halachas. Because ultimately what you want to do is see the big picture. If you will remain fragmented, you're going to forget it very quickly. You never really have a grasp. You need to what's called synthesize halachas. You need to put them into the big picture, which we're going to do. So in the concept of big picture, we can ask ourselves, this halacha, where does it fit? In what scheme does it fit? Where does it fit in terms of what's the larger area, in which this goes? So you would do that, so that's synthesis and so on. Then another one is location and the structure, which is larger than an area. Because an area is basically a category, but there are many categories itself that become a structure, which is a much greater picture, and so on.
Creating the structure is synthesis?
Yeah, it's like if you take a look at that picture. That picture is Reb Meir Shapiro, right? The founder of Daf Yomi. Well, the structure is the entire picture. But we could take a look at his hat. That's a category. You see? All the pieces that went into that hat. That's a category. But then you have the hat, the man's face, his beard, his clothing. That's the structure. You see? So you have to realize there are two things going on in a big picture. There's the categories, and there's the structure itself. You know what I'm saying?
It seems arbitrary. You could say the wall. Well, let's look at the wall.
You could,
So one of the things.
yeah.
So why isn't just one thing?
Because the
look at it in
wall-
its larger context.
Yeah, because
Now we'll
the
cover
wall.
both.
Yeah, but the wall is really not essentially part of the picture. It's merely a mokum, a place which the picture can hang. But in terms of the picture itself, that's what you're concerned with. I mean, you can go infinite and say
No,
the house
That's why it's arbitrary.
is part of the universe.
Right.
No, it's not arbitrary. That's what I'm trying to point out. You want to look at the picture
Because you're
because
looking at
that's the
picture.
unit.
So let's look at the unit. There was the wall. Part of the wall. Is
No, the
this
wall
picture.
is not part of the picture.
Correct.
The wall is merely a place that the picture hangs. It's not part of the entity called picture. Yeah, I mean, you have to make a division. You know what I'm saying?
He's
So
asking-
it's not arbitrary. You need to identify the entity and stop. There may be things that are surrounding the entity, but who cares? You see, so the structure that we want to do is the entity called picture, whatever that is. Within that picture, there are areas. Those are called categories. and
So
so
in,
on.
the, in this
You
checklist,
say?
what is structure? So what's there?
The what?
What is structure?
Where's the entity?
What is the entity of structure
In where?
that we're talking about?
No, what are we talking about?
Mishnayos.
It's not in, yeah.
Oh, we're going to get into it. I'm just
But
going
it has to be one, so that every mission, every category, every area will fit into a structure, and that structure will fit into another structure.
Correct.
So eventually, you'll reach a point that
But you're going to stop because you're going to recognize we'll stop at a certain point. But there, what you are raising is a point, because theoretically everything is connected to everything else. The question is, when does it become so distantly connected that we don't want to do that now? Yeah, later on we could do it, but we just want to stick right now into what's called its immediate structure. That's that's how it works. And so Anyway, which we'll see how it works and so on. Okay, the last idea is called the variations of the halacha. Many times, if you have a halacha and you vary it, what happens? What happens to the din? What happens to the principle? And when you see a whole bunch of things, you can actually begin to see the changes. Like you take, for instance, take Yevama. There are many. So the classic case of Yevama is what? You have man, no kids, dies, wife. Then you have a brother-in-law. It's a classic case. But there are variations of that, for instance, right? Well, what happens if the guy had kids? What happens if the guy had 2 wives? What happens if the guy had 4 brother-in-laws? You see, all kinds of variations here, you see. And when you study each variation, and then you begin to see the flow of what's going on in general in the halachas itself, you see. In this case, by Yevamas, what happens to the tzivui, that the brother-in-law has to marry his sister-in-law, you see. So the question is, well, what happens if this guy had 3 wives? Well, what happens if one of the wives is really osa to the brother-in-law? So the one wife is permitted to him, but the others are osa. So can he now marry just one and forget the rest? Or since one is osa, he can't marry any of them? And so on. There are all kinds of variations. You could look at a situation and change its variations, and all of a sudden the halacha changes. And that gives you tremendous insight into what's happening when you see the differences in the conditions. I'm talking theoretically now, obviously. I'm not connecting it to any place. So, but what I'm trying to do is to give you a theoretical roadmap. What are the objectives in halacha? Mishnah. Okay, what is a Mishnah really? Well, a Mishnah is basically a collection of halachas. That's what it is. So the question is there a connection between halachas in a given Mishnah? And the answer is yes. When you want to learn a Mishnayos, there are 4 things you're going to look for. There are 4 things you're going to look for.
A Mishnah.
In a Mishnah, and that's where really so we explain the concept of halacha. When you want to learn a Mishnah, there are 4 things you want to do. 1. Well, there are 3 levels in a Mishnah. There's the whole Masechta itself. There's the Mishnah itself. And then there's the individual halachas of a Mishnah. Each one has a roadmap. You thought this was simple, huh? Okay. So the first thing you're going to do, the Masechta itself, well, simply, what's the title? Well, what's the title? It's Brochos. Maseches Brochos. Title. Yes? But where does it belong? It belongs in Seder Zroim. What number is it in Seder Zroim? First. See, that's relatively simple. But you also want to know its composition. What you're trying to do is get a handle on the whole thing, as opposed to just one halacha. Right? What's its composition? There are 3 things. How many Mishnayos are in Brochos? 57. That tells me something. There are 57 Mishnahs that I got to struggle through. Right? Second idea. How many Prakim are there? 9. The third idea is, what's the distribution of Mishnayos to Prakim? It means in first parak, how many Mishnahs are there? In second parak, and obviously they're going to add up to 57. All it does is try to give you a handle on what you're about to come up against. So in this particular case,
But there's nothing.
what?
There's nothing to do with information.
There's no conceptual idea.
What
No,
are the numbers?
but I want to tell you something. It does give you a framework. So if all of a sudden, if I know that there are 9 Mishnayos, you'll see. You're going to see the next series about
This
this.
is sort of, you can get an idea of where you're headed and where you're holding because you know where you are.
It's more or less, it's not gonna, it doesn't give you concepts or halachas, but it does give you a feel of what the parameters are. It means what the boundaries of brochos.
Yeah, but it can vary between, because Mishnayos in the Seder of the Mishnah will differ because some Mishnayos are split and some Mishnayos are put together. So what kind of...
What do you mean by split and put together? What does that mean?
Because some Mishnayos are, you have one right after the other as far and with Gemara in between them, and within the Mishnah there, it's one continuous Mishnah.
We're looking.
What's the real shine?
All I'm saying is that it gives you a feel of the composition of the Masechta you're about to do.
Okay.
Not that you're going to derive any halachas from it, but all it is a handle. It's a handle. The totality of brachas we know has 57 Mishnayos, and we know it has 9 prakim, and I can divide it. Now, the advantage of that is retention. It's retention. The greater something is clear, the easier it is to remember. You see, so for memory, it's very important. See, you don't want to look at something as this blur. I just learned brachas, and wow, it's like all these mishnayos. No, you're not going to remember that because it's a blur. But if you delineate specifically, it's easy to remember. Then there's 57 mishnayos. And then once you delineate that, then you can begin to locate. Well, the 4th Mishnah dealt with this, which we'll see,
Doesn't it sort of wouldn't it also give an identity to each section?
Yes.
Instead of just like, we're just going weiter, now
Yes,
it's like, we are now holding in Mishnah above Perek.
Yeah, and this is what it talks about. It's very important to delineate units as opposed to seeing them as a big chart. For memory especially, not just for understanding, but for memory. Look, this isn't... this is not the ikka of what I want to say. But I'm just telling you, if you want to have a thorough clarity, it's a good idea. Now, here's where we get more important to the concepts. The first thing is called the CI, central idea.
We're in the Mishnah now, right?
We're in the Mishnah. So I gave the overall demographics, as you can say. There's the title, there's the order, the number in the order, there's the amount of Mishnayos, Prakim, and the distribution of Mishnayos to Prakim. So that delineates. It's easy to remember that. Okay?
Central idea is central for all Mishnah.
Oh, yeah.
Now
wait. And remember, we talk about the Masechta, not a Mishnah. Now, the next, right?
Central idea for Masechta.
The whole Masechta, yeah.
We're still in Masechta.
Yes, that's going to be fun. So, the first concept is called the central idea of the Masechta. Is there one idea that encompasses the entire Masechta? Now we're doing synthesis, but it's very good because when you do that, you begin to see the different dimensions or themes of the whole Masechta. Because one Masechta can deal with many themes, not just one. You see, again, we're trying to delineate themes or different sections and not just see it as, brochas.
But is there always one central idea?
Usually. It could be 2, but usually it's 1. So
It
we're
is
going to
like
try it on brachas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brochos, there are plenty.
Yeah, but yes.
No, there's one central
You just didn't
thing.
find the central idea.
But what I'm telling you now is something very important. That Masechta can have one central idea, of which all the Mishnayos or the Prakim is nothing more than just different segments of that one idea. And it's incredible for memory. Instead of seeing one big blur, you now see, these are the different areas, the central idea. The central idea will be the idea that encompasses or includes everything in the Masechta. Now, then there's that's a CI, my abbreviation. Easy to remember that way. And then there's what's called a CIA.
You have an NSA too?
What?
No.
Do I have what?
NSA. Yeah.
NSA, yeah. The CIA is the central idea area Well, where does the central idea fit in its area, which is a larger view of the central idea? Then, well, what are the different themes of this Masechta? Because any given Masechta will have different themes, different sections that can be very different. Okay? So, again, you have the central idea area, and the different themes. That already is much more what's called content-oriented. Okay? Fabulous. Now only one more thing to do. We just did the requirements for halacha. We did for the Masechta. You want to, when you delineate, then when you chazer the delineation, it will give you an incredible command. You don't realize that. It'll be a tremendous command of the ideas of the entire Masechta. No longer is there a blur, but you see clearly everything muvchan, it's hafchonas. The greater the hafchonas, which is the distinctions, the greater is the clarity, and the greater is the ability to remember. Great. Now, when we learn a Mishnah, there are 4 things in the roadmap. Now we're into the individual Mishnah. How's it look so far?
So far, it looks good.
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 The first thing you're going to do, and this you need to recognize, is Mishnah a basic text? What do you think?
What's in basic?
It's a beginning text.
Yeah, it's just halachos.
You say yes.
No,
You say no.
no,
No.
absolutely.
What?
Of course not, because that everything is written in its utmost bekitzer way possible.
No,
That we have to spread apart and understand.
that's the style, brevity. But that's not my question. I'm not going into the style of how Rebbe.
There's no preliminary information.
Oh, so therefore it's not beginning. The problem, the difficulty that Mishnah presents is that it's intermediate. There is a tremendous amount of ideas that you need to know before you get into a Mishnah that the Mishnah just doesn't say. Because Rebbe obviously doesn't say everything. You see, those got
The
called...
Sakihati is very popular.
Yeah, correct. So that's preliminary ideas. Before you start a Mishnah, you have to ask yourself, well, wait a minute. What are the preliminary ideas to understand this Mishnah in the first place? You want to call it background information? Fine. I call it preliminary ideas, or the PI. The next thing you want to do is, what's the central idea of the Mishnah? Just like a Masechta. A Mishnah has a central idea, which means there's one idea that encompasses all the statements of that Mishnah. And then what's the area of that central idea? Same idea of the Mishnah. Okay? Now if you really want to remember the Mishnah, then what you're going to do is count the statements of the Mishnah. How many are there? In this Mishnah, how many statements are there? And what are they?
That's Mishnah says explicitly.
Yeah, but you don't want to just learn the Mishnah. How many different statements or halachas are in this Mishnah? Remember, the greater the delineation, the greater is the ability to remember. And you want to know what they are, besides the number, what they are. There you are. Preliminary ideas, central idea, the central idea area, the number of statements and what they are. There you are. That's the roadmap for the Mishnah. Okay, that's it. Sechta, Mishnayos, and Halacha. Now, Brochos. Who are Brochos here? Basically, I think we all have a feeling of it, right? Tell me what the central idea of Brochos is. Actually, what you're better off doing is give me if you can, what are the themes of Brochos? How many different areas are there in Brochos? What do you think? Now, many times you're going to learn Masechta, you won't be able to do it unless you learn the whole Masechta. Remember, the only reason why we can do it because, we've been familiar with it, right? But really, a lot of this information you won't know until you've gathered the information, obviously. But as you gather the information, what you want to know about the Masechta are these ideas, ultimately. So we can do it to Brochos, because more or less we have a familiarity with that. But you're not going to be able to do it to many other places. You know, for instance, Uksin. You know what I'm saying? Even Caleb, you know, or Tamura, and so on. So to a certain extent, you can do it, you know. But like I said, let's see if we can get a challenge. What is the central idea of Maseches Brochos? Actually, what we should do first is what are the different themes of Brochos? It's easier. And then from that, we're going to try to go up and figure out what's the commonality of that. Anybody know?
Well, it's Kriya Shema, Tefillah, and Brochos.
Good. Kriya Shema is one.
Tefillah,
Tefillah is two. Great.
Brochos,
Brochos is three.
and
What else? That it?
Brachos are really two types of brachos.
Which is
Birkas and Anin.
good.
And then other brachos, brachos on Riyah, on Kiddush, Abdallah, which is the whole parak on that. Because
It falls into three
Shah brachos, I
brachos.
mean, it's a whole collection of the brachos.
Yeah. Okay. Hido, Brochos,
Hido,
Hido.
Riyah, right?
So I have three themes, right?
So we have Shema is one. Kriya Shema. We have Tefillah is two. You have the concept of Brochos, either Hanenin or Hido. Right?
There's the whole parak, which isn't Birkas Adah.
Yeah.
That really starts off with Beis Yel Veisham, like on things in the Suda, Kiddush, Abdallah, okay. So-
Yeah. Yeah. So you could say,
Birkas Hamazon,
Um,
that's Brochos.
well, Brochos Hamazon is Brocha, because they need further subdivide to Rishonim and Achronim and so on, you know. But basically, these would be the themes, you know. Can you find a commonality?
Would it be attributing Hashem as the source of the physical?
Well, Shema doesn't do that. You left it out.
Well, in a way it does, because you are saying that you yourself are under the domain of HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
I don't know, too vague. Anybody else? Is there a commonality between all these stuff?
No.
Sure there is. Not good to say no. What's the commonality here?
All three mention Hashem.
All three mention Hashem.
We have to start from something. So.
It's true. But that's like... It's true, but I don't know if I would say that was the commonality. Although it is true, you know.
No statements.
I mean, I could have said... There were what?
Statements.
What type of statements?
Brochos.
No,
Statements which have an effect.
What type of statements that have an effect?
Which effect?
An elevating effect.
Who?
An elevating effect.
In elevating?
Yeah. They take that what you...
It's true, but a lot of things elevate. So I don't know if that would be... I mean, we're trying to look for something that's unique to, say, this, to Brochos, you know. What I would say is the essential idea of Brochos, right, is that they all basically consist of verbal declarations that have halachic significance. It's all about verbal declarations. It's not about an action that we do. It's an action of the mouth. In other words, Brochos deals with all kinds of verbal declarations that have halachic significance. How's that sound?
Precise.
What?
Precise.
Yeah, but it's different than Shabbos. Shabbos doesn't have to do with verbal declarations, you know? What does Shabbos have to do with?
Shabbos.
Well, it's like saying, what does Brochos have to do with? Brochos. No, Shabbos has to do with what? With activity. All about activity, right?
There's a certain type of activities that have to do with Shabbos.
No, we don't forget, activity in general. Shabbos is all about activity,
Yeah, but there's a...
which is forbidden
Well,
or
also has to do
required.
with activity. There's
No,
some-
no, what does Bava Kama do with?
Damn,
Who?
recompense for him.
No, forget the compensation. It has to do with what? Interference of bias, which is called damage. Actually, what Bava Kama really has to do is mazikim, those things that can do the damage. But it's all about damages, which is what? Which is some type of interference in your ownership. It's called damage, you see? So that's the whole Masechta. So the whole idea of Brochos would be what? Verbal declarations. I use the word declarations as opposed to statements. Because a declaration is something you say, trying to express something. Statement, you should make any statement. Whereas a declaration is a statement that has meaning behind it. You know, you're trying to profess, trying to say, you know. Okay? So I would say that the whole Masechta really deals with what? With verbal declarations that have halachic significance.
How is tefillah a verbal declaration?
When you daven, you're verbally declaring things. Before Inu Hashem, that Reifei Chol
It's a
Bosom.
declaration?
It's not a declaration. If I say Shemei Tefillah, it's still it could be about kosher, but it's still a declaration. If I mean, what it declares is that you can actually supply what I'm asking you.
Yeah, that's
you know, that's a
It
declaration.
contains declarations.
Yeah, but it is a verbal declaration. If I say, first of all, in Shemona Esrei, you have two things going on. You have you have what he can do, and please do it to me. So it's clearly a declaration. When you say Reifei Chole, Amo Yisrael, that is a declaration. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, once he does that, then you say, please, before Inu Hashem Elokeinu, you know. So it's a request based on a declaration. You know what I'm saying? But essentially, it's declarations. And within that context, I can now ask him, please do it for me. You know what I'm saying? But it's still declarations primarily, you know. Anyway, so that's how I would say. Verbal declarations that have halachic significance. How's that sound? Which is very different than all the other Siddharim of Shas. You know? Great. So that's what Brochos is all about. How many different types of verbal declarations are? Well, we have Shema, we have Tefillah, we have Birchas Hanenin, which is a declaration. You know what I'm saying? We have Birchas Haidor, which is a declaration. Kiddush, all of these are declarations verbally. So that's nice. We have identified the central idea, the entire Masechta, that's all dealing with verbal declarations that have some type of halachic significance. You know what I'm saying? That's great. Oh, so now what are we into? We're now in the beginning of the Masechta, which is all about what? Shema. You know what I'm saying?
Did we see where this fits into the Seder's Rhyme?
No, I didn't do the Seder.
The central idea area, the CIA, whatever we get was.
Yeah, I didn't do the idea, but you want to do the
Is
Seder?
that the next one on the list? Oh, sorry.
No, yeah, you want to do it? What's the idea?
What should we do first generally? What's the Seder?
What?
Does matter? What's the Seder? When we approach something, what's the Seder? What do we do first?
What do you want?
Yes, should we do that? I mean, is it first area? I mean,
Well,
what's the Seder usually?
you have to have a familiarity with the Seder, you know, Brochos, this Peah, Demai, Klayim, you know, Shvius, Trumas, Maestras, Chala, all the Bikurim. You have to have a familiarity. You guys want to try? What's the idea that encompasses the entire Seder's rhyme?
Emunah.
Come on.
No. No. That's Hashkofa. This is not an easy thing. I'll throw out some which is really challenging. But yet it has a central idea. And the trick is to know the central idea of all 6 Siddurim. And wow, what a look. You have now seen the totality of what the Rebbe wants from man, halachically. How valuable that is. It's incredible.
Yeah, we should do it definitely.
What? Shows you do it. you see the beauty of a central idea. It's not confusing. So it's no more like looking at a cholent. You're now looking at specific, a set of havchonas. And now you see things clearly. So the question is, what is Seder's Royim? What's the central idea of Seder's Royim? Just want to get that. Nope.
Why not Emunah?
Who?
Why not Emunah in a serious note? Because
Emunah.
no, but the point is that you're planting. That's what drawing is, growing things. Bracha is asking for those things to grow.
Is
That
it?
you're never
Shema has nothing to do with growing
guaranteed
things.
that they are.
I want to tell you something. You see, you have to be aware of something. It's possible to find linkages, connections, which is really what we're trying to do.
But it doesn't.
But they have to
Not
be
essential.
you have to be essential. I could find. I could say, well, what's the relationship between this, and this and this, So I say, well, they're both furniture. See, that's a much greater linkage than if I say, what was the relation between this and this? Well, the same color. Okay, so what? That's not essential. You know what I'm saying? You want to find something that connects essentially, or else it's called a non-essential idea. You know what I'm saying? So,
We should listen to all
the whole
six
Zroim, what's the essential idea that wraps up? "15 seconds. These
The
chess
order of
players, they
your
get
daily
these
life.
time, or else,
It's not gonna happen.
it's not gonna happen. Well, I don't give up so quick. Yeah, sit down in 10 seconds. What do you think? Not easy. It's like, you look at it and say, wait a minute, you mean there's actually an idea that unites the whole thing? And the answer is yes. But in order to do that, you have to know the essential idea of each Masechta. You see, the problem is we lack information. So if you don't even know the essential idea of each Masechta, you can know the essential of the whole thing. See, so one builds on top of the other. But we know the Masechtas of that, so we can kind of feel. What do you think?
Something to do with farming.
Who?
Something with farming.
Farming. Agriculture.
Yeah.
How's that sound?
What if it's with Shema though?
Who?
What has to do with Shema though?
Oh, it's another problem. I'll tell you, it's not agriculture. Looks like it's agriculture, but it's not. It's deceptive. I'll tell you what it is, what I think. You ready? Zroim deals with the different devices that permit object usage. Wow, like, where did that come from?
Are you serious?
Let me say it again. Yeah. What is forget Kriya Shema and Tefillah for a minute. But what is Birchas Hanena? For that, you have to have a idea. Because the Gemara says that if you don't make a bracha, it's kizu goizel. So if you make a bracha, what is it? So what does a bracha do? It permits the usage of an object, doesn't it? Food. You can't eat the food unless you make a bracha. Because it's gzela.
Kriya Shema.
Wait, just put those aside for, because you'll see in a minute why.
Can I go to school?
Pay also.
Who?
Pay
It's
also.
not direct.
Why pay?
It permits. I mean,
Doesn't, if you don't take pay, it doesn't ask for the rest of it. What does pay permit?
Generally speaking,
Bikurim.
in order to eat or to use the objects, you need to do things. Either you have to give truma, maisa, rishon, chalo. These are all actions that you need to take to permit the usage of the rest of the stuff.
Well, Bikurim it doesn't. Bikurim you can eat.
Sure, you need bikurim also.
No, but you
Doesn't
can eat the
commit
fruit
anything.
without being mafresh the Bikurim.
Yeah, but it's certainly an activity that's connected with, before you do this, you need to do that.
You don't
You
have
know.
to. You don't have. You
Fine,
have
but-
to do it because there's a mitzvah, but you don't have to do it.
I want to tell you something. There may be deviations, but overall, the Seder deals with those things that you need to do, right, in order to permit the object usage, specifically agriculture, because most of the Masechtas deal with that. That's generally what the Seder deals with.
Shvis doesn't permit anything.
Oh, therefore, it also deals with those objects which have no permission to use, no matter what you do. Exactly. It's the yes and the no. Exactly. Kilayim.
Alright,
Same thing. Same thing. You see, but in the end, how can I use an object? What do I have to do? Most of the Masechtas deal with that.
but also like I cannot use.
And
that.
which objects I can't use no matter what I do. There are no devices. You see? So Zroim generally deals with those devices, object usage. What are the devices and which objects do not allow usage no matter what device I do. But in general, if you think about it, you go through the Maseches, they are either referring to objects which cannot be used, like Shvius, Ola, Kalayim. You know what I'm saying? No matter what you do, you can't use them. But the rest of the Masechtas, Truma, Maisa, Maisa Rishon, Chala, and so on. These are all things that Brochos, I'm not talking about the first two Brochim, but the rest of Brochos is all things, generally speaking, that these are the things that you need to do for object usage.
Shema.
Who?
Shema.
It's a different reason.
Shema, put those two. But I'm trying to give you a feel of the totality of the Seder, because the Seder is so large, obviously what's going to happen is there may be one or two of them, more than just, But look how much this unites. This idea of object usage, that which I can use and that which I can't use, it unites 90% of Zerayim. There's always going to be a couple things that stick out, just like in Brochos. You see what I'm saying? But that has tremendous value, because you've now clearly delineated what's going on.
That's true, then why can't you say that the Seder, the all-encompassing idea of the Seder is Zerayim, it really is agriculture, halacha as regarded to agriculture, with the exception of a few mishnayos in Brachos, and therefore all you have is just a few mishnayos in Brachos that don't deal
Because
with agriculture.
agriculture is about what? Is the object. But the halacha is not about the object. It's about what is the halacha of the object. Torah is not about an object. It's about the din of the case, or the conduct. You ask yourself, what is Torah really about? It's not so much about a situation. The real matter of Torah is, what do I do? Or what is a law? A law is a specific required behavior. How do you define halacha? What's the definition of a halacha? It's an old phrase. It's an old favorite of mine.
A situation, or before the beginning, a situation with a din, which of course.
A law or a halacha is what? Is the required behavior in a given situation. So which really is mostly Torah? It's a required din. Of course, Torah has situations, because then what's the required behavior in what? You see, but Torah is fundamentally about the required behaviors of many different situations. You see, so I'm not into so much. So it's true. Most of Zerayim is about agriculture. That's true. But what it's really about is, okay, what am I using this for? Why do I have truma? Yeah, truma is about agriculture. That's true. But that's not why the Torah is talking about truma. The Torah is talking about truma because in order to eat the rest of the stuff, I got to give truma. That's what it's really talking about. But wait a minute, the rest of the stuff is what? Is what? Is permission of usage. That's what Torah is really. That's a general idea, theme that runs through the whole Zerayim. So of course it deals with agriculture, but I hold that's a trap. Because what they're focusing on is the object, which the real focus is on what? The law concerning that object. And the law concerning that object is what? Is usage.
So more than, what I was saying, it's more than, even though there is a common thread that unites more of the Seder, but that's not the focus of Torah.
Yeah. Well,
So
that the
better
word Torah means heror, instruction about what? What's the required behavior in situations? That's really what Torah is all about. That's
There
the
has to
concept
be a
of a
common
law.
thread.
That's the concept
The common
of a
thread
law.
has to be that.
So when you look in Zerayim, you say, okay, what law are we talking about? And the answer is usage. What's the required, behavior in order to be able to use all this? And the answer is, either it's a matana, or it's a verbal declaration. And now you understand why Brochos is in. That's right. Voila. Because a bracha also permits usage of a object. You see? That's why Brochos fits into Zerayim. Even though they're different devices. The device of bracha, how do you get usage of a food? You make a verbal declaration, right? Well, how do you eat the rest of your wheat? You give a matana. You see, the only difference is different devices, but the purpose is the same, to permit the object usage. And that beautifully explains pshat. Forget about the drushes that people give. It deals with the same thing, except the only difference is devices. In Brochos, the device is a verbal declaration. In the rest of Zroim, it is matana. You got to give away something.
But they really build on one on top of each other. Meaning, you give something. Now it's mutar. Now, if you want to eat it, you have to make a bracha.
Yeah, so you could say there are different. There are levels of
Different
usage.
steps, exactly.
Yeah, okay, that you would say. But you
The
see
truth is
that.
that the whole middle of Bikurim actually deals with that, because it talks
Yeah.
about the interplay between truma, the things that aser,
Yeah.
that you need to do in order to be mat to the rest of the food,
Of the-
versus
yeah.
Bikurim
Yeah.
that doesn't.
The central idea of the whole Zroim is object usage. Most of it, which is agriculture. You know, because that's really what you want to do is food. Is the agriculture is food, obviously, and so on. You know, but they're just different devices. Matona is one device. That's why the Rambam calls it Hilchas Matnes. Matonas. That's really what it is, because that's the nature of the device. Whereas in Brochos, by food eating, it's the verbal declaration.
See, maybe because it really the Mishnah really spends a lot of time contrasting Bikurim with other forms, Ma'aser Sheni and Truma, and this just shed a whole new light on it. It sort of has to excuse itself. This is why I'm putting Bikurim in this Masechta, even though it doesn't ask the Goren.
Yeah.
But this is why I put it in, because it's a contrast.
Yeah. Anyway, fine. So look, we now have a handle. See, you thought it was impossible? It's not. You need to find the essential idea, and then all of a sudden everything clicks. Now we need to figure out what is Kriya Shema doing in Brochos. It's not a device, right? It's not a device of some sort. Tefillah is also not. Tefillah is a device to get the Moshe to listen to you, if you want to use that, you know. But what is Kriya Shema doing in Tefillah, doing in Brochos? Who can figure out a pshat? There's all kinds of things. But what we're trying to always do is, let's give the pshat, the most simple idea that truly expresses the idea, without having to resort into, whatever, you know. Why don't you say?
Verbal declaration that Hashem is the one you make the brachas to?
Yes?
Hashem is one?
Yeah,
He's
but
the
what does it
only
have
one
to
you
do
make
with
brachas?
brachas? It's not a device of anything. You're right. But it's not a device, so what's it doing here? It's true, it's a verbal declaration, that's
Verbal
true.
declaration, the pre-existing verbal declaration of the rest of the verbal declaration.
So, okay, fine. Let's go along with that. What you're saying is the common denominator between Brochos, Shema, and Tefillah is that they're both verbal declarations, which is true of the other program. That is true.
It machshir the whole day, all activities of the day.
Well, they're all verbal declarations. So the truth is, what you've just said is enough to explain, but there's something beyond that, deeper.
We're making verbal declarations. So who are we declaring to? So we're identifying who the one we're declaring to. Before we do Tefillah and Brachos and the different Brachos, we're identifying who that declaration is to, the object, so to speak, of the declaration.
Sort of. But there's something more profound, much more simple, logical, and clear. If you sit down and make an agreement with somebody, yes? You have two guys, you make an agreement with somebody, right? Yes? There's two things that have to go on. One is both parties have to agree, right, that they want to make an agreement. Then the second thing is, what is the agreement all about? You see, there's two premises here. One is that, we both agree to have an agreement, which means that we both accept the fact that we want to enter into an agreement.
So you're declaring Hashem's shlita over absolutely everything, which then requires you to do everything that's drawing requires.
Very good. Mamash, almost there. Exactly.
100% okay.
The reason why Rebbe put Shema first is, wait a minute, what is the whole Mishnah all about? Mitzvahs, laws. Excuse me, I haven't accepted the whole concept of that the Rebbe has a right to give me laws. I haven't accepted that yet. Before I accept anything, which is the clauses of the agreement, I need to accept the fact that, well, we're going to have an agreement. I accept to the idea of entering into an agreement. You know?
Why is it? Well, why was it sort of put into brachos?
Wait, no. Well, first, wait. Hold that. So what is Shema? When you verbally declare the Shema, what are you declaring? That's what we have to ask.
Yichud.
All Malchus Shamayim.
Oh, wait. Two different things. Let's go in logical order. The first thing you declare is that there is a God. Hashem Elokeinu. Hashem. Right? There is a supreme being. Two, that this supreme being is one. Yes? Number three, that he has a relationship with us called Melech. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusoi, which is an essential attachment to the Shema. He's a king.
So it's a
Yes.
hagah to his shmita.
Well, exactly. You see what we did? So there's a series of... Shema is nothing more than a verbal declaration of a series of beliefs. It's a series of beliefs. Everybody with me? It's a series of beliefs that says, I am going to enter into an agreement with him first. And now tell me, what is the agreement? So what is the entry? So one, there is a supreme being. I mean, without that, there's nothing going on. Two, he is one. So I'm not going to enter into one and forget about the rest of the beings. He is only one. Three, what's his relationship with me? That he's a king. Four, that I accept him as my king, his sovereignty. You see. Five, right? Well, what is the sovereignty? What does he say? In other words, he exists, he's one, he's a king, he's my king. You know, it's not just he's a sovereign, but he's my sovereign. Then I accept whatever his sovereignty says, which is his commandments. Oh, now that I've accepted his commandments, now I can give me the rest of the 4,192 Mishnayos. Because that's basically the rest of that's the agreement. That spells out the clauses in the agreement. The mitzvahs, which are the halachas, is the agreement. But you can't do that. First you got to accept him as your melech, as your king, that you enter an agreement and say, I'm going to accept him. That's why Shema comes first. Shema, other than, of course it has verbally declaration. It's similar in the devices. Remember that? But what's more important is that Shema is an agreement to enter an agreement, which you need first, or else what's the point of even learning Mishnayos?
So it doesn't belong to Brochos, it doesn't belong to Zroim, it belongs to Shas, it's the beginning of Shas.
It belongs to Taryag mitzvahs altogether. Exactly.
I mean,
But since we're beginning Taryag,
Just
what
answer those.
is the Mishnah really? Right? You know, it's funny. If you know what the fastest way to know Kol Torah Kula is? What's the fastest way to learn Torah Kol Kula? Which nobody knows.
The names of Masechtas.
Who?
To know the names of Masechtas.
No.
You must know.
No. What's the fastest way to learn Kol Torah Kula? I mean, you won't know Kol Torah Kula. Who? But what's the fastest way to get a real handle on this? Taryag mitzvahs. Taryag. Nobody learns a Taryag. But if you learn the Taryag, that's it. You've learned every single tzivoy that the Baruch Hashem gives you. The fastest way. You know? So it was just astounding. You know? And that's really what should be first. You should learn the Taryag and fit it into all the categories. You should develop, let's say, 10 categories: who, what, where, when, and why, and so on. And then each of the mitzvahs, you go, well, who's chayav, who's exempt, when is it, and where is it, and so on. You did that for 613 commandments, you know, Kol Torah Kula. In its most basic general statements. It's incredible how much you'd know. You have an incredible view of the entire Torah, because you would have gone through every law in the books. Then, but where are the details? Where are the details to the Taryag? And the answer is Mishnayos. There you are. Mishnayos is nothing more than the details of the Taryag. So that's, Torah is Taryag, Mishnah is the details. What's next? What about the problems? Where are the problems? Gemara. That's what it is. This is the relationship between all three. Torah, Taryag, is the overall commandments. Mishnah, the details of those commandments. What are all the problems involving those commandments? Those are all the sugis of Shas. You see? That's the relationship between all three of these. So what Rebbe decided, and he's right, of course, is wait a minute, before I give you the enumeration of all the details, excuse me, I got to teach you the laws of the acceptance of the whole agreement in the first place. Without doubt, what's the point? So therefore, Shema is the acceptance that I agree to enter an agreement with you. You see. Now, what is the agreement? The rest. But before we get to, after that, we go into Tefillah. Tefillah is very interesting. Because essentially what Tefillah is to describe the attributes of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Well, with whom did I enter the agreement with? That's really what it is. Each bracha is really a description of the attribute of the Rebbeinu Shalom. It's really what it is. Then, of course, within that attribute, I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I'm going to make a lot of requests. You see, but since I've accepted the Rebbeinu Shalom as a melech, as the only melech, as a sovereign, and I've accepted the agreement, right? Who is the being that I've accepted? And of course, I'm going to make some requests, because if I've accepted the Rebbeinu Shalom, I can certainly request things from him. You know what I'm saying? Why not? You see? So the tefillah is the natural conclusion to the acceptance of the whole idea. Once we finish Shema and tefillah, now we can go into brachos, which is the beginning, the verbal declaration to permit the usage of objects. You see how it works? It's simple. It's claw, pshat, without droshes and fancy footwork, as they say. You know what I'm
Why
saying?
isn't Shema and Tefillah its own Masechta? Like,
Because because then I would go to what you said, because in the end, what is it? It's fundamental verbal declaration. I might as well put it into the, Rebbe is always trying to make it easier to learn. I mean, so on, Yeah, so, but now we understand why it precedes everything. I once gave somebody asked me to speak, it was a Vachnach. You know what a Vachnach is? Kid's born, he's got bris, then the night before you say Shema, So, so like, what in the world is a Vachnach? You see, that's what a Vachnach is, where you have a bunch of kids saying Shema by the kid before the day of the bris, which is the next day. But it's the same concept, because before the child can enter into a bris, an agreement, what does the child have to do? I need to agree that I'm going to enter an agreement. That's the Vachnach.
Even before that, I need to know that there is somebody I'm going to enter an agreement
Well,
with.
that's all part of it. In other words, when you're going to do a brisk on a kid. The kid never agreed to anything, really. So the Vachnach is we are the agents of the child. And that's why you read Kriya Shema. What we're really doing is, it's as if the child is saying, I agree to enter an agreement. Right? I agree to enter the agreement, which is the covenant. And that's a bris. So the bris is a physical statement of an agreement, but the agreement of entry was the Vachnach. Interesting. And of course, the kid can't say anything because the kid's an infant. I mean, he was just born, right? So we are the agents of that child. It's the same concept here. Before you can give laws, before you can ask somebody to learn the laws, you need to say, well, you need to agree to the premise, which means you agree to enter an agreement altogether. You see? That's why you have Shema, you have Tefillah, which is an understanding of who did you enter with. And then based on that, you make requests. But it's really a description of the Rebbeinu Shalom, what he can do. Shemiat Tefillah, Reifei Choyle Amo Yisrael, Borei Choleinu. Well, that's the request. Mavorach Hashonim. That's what he does. And so on. Bekabetz Nitche Amo Yisrael. Those are his attributes. That's who you've entered an agreement with. Then, of course, within that context, we can ask him. And now that you've done these two things, now we can proceed with the whole Torah Kula. You see? Which makes a lot of sense. It's obvious. How's that all that sound?
That was your question. CIA.
So what have we covered so far? It's a lot of stuff. It's all fundamental. One, we went through the halacha roadmap, right? Then we went to the Masechta roadmap, Mishnah roadmap. Then we took a look at Zroim, that Zroim itself has one idea. Then we went into the whole concept of what is Shema and Tefillah doing in brachos. And what's the whole concept? What's the central idea of Brochos? It's a verbal declaration that has halachic significance. You see? And now, we now see the order and so on.
Can we do 6 Sidorim?
Say it again?
Can we do 6 Sidorim?
You really want to do 6 Sidorim? You got 7 minutes.
Oh.
So then do
People have 7 Sidorim.
Yeah, you're curious, huh? So what's Moed about? Give me the central idea of Moed.
Anything which is mana related.
Moed, the real question is, what's the definition of a Moed? The answer is a designated time period in which activity is regulated, either being forbidden or required. That's what a Moed is. So therefore, Moed is all about what? Time-determined activities, either forbidden or required. It's the whole Moed.
Oh, so that was easy.
Yeah, wasn't it? Okay, Noshim. What's Noshim about?
Oh, it's
When
about
you can
women.
marry and who you can marry.
Who? Who said that? More or less, but that's not really the central idea. What's the central idea of Noshim? Bilus, ownership. Except most of the object that has the most laws of ownership is called a woman. And the ownership is called Ishus. Ishus is a specific type of ownership where the object that you own is called a woman. I hate to tell you that to your wives, but this is not something you want to tell to
I should cut it
Isha
out.
and bias.
I should cut it out of the video.
No, you can leave it in there. Women won't listen
That
to
will
this
get
anyway. But what Noshim is really about Bilus. That's why Kedushin, after the first Mishnah, has Eved Ivri Nikneh, Behema Gasa Nikneh. It's all about Bilus. And each Masechta in Noshim, it would be fun to go to every Masechta in Shas and see how they're just different categories of the central idea I just laid out. What's Nizikin all about?
Interference with violence.
Exactly, the negation of Bilus.
Just
Or its
Nizikin.
interference.
Nizikin.
Exactly. That's what Isaac is. It's either intervention or negation of Bilus. That's what's called damage. You see. Then within the Zikun you have a whole bunch of Masechtas and so on, which we're not going to go into. And what do we have? Kachim. What's Kachim about? Kachim is about
Carbonos.
who?
Carbonos.
No. I mean, it's yes, but no. Remember, we need the central idea. It's all about the avoid of the Beis Hamikdash, isn't it? One of which is korbanos. The concept of korbanos is only one of the activities that took place in the Beis Hamikdash, isn't it? But the avoid of the Beis Hamikdash is kachim, the totality. And that itself is subdivided, without going into that. And then what's the central idea of Taurus?
Being ready for Avodah?
No, although that's a requirement for the Avodah, but not, what is Taurus all about?
About Tuma.
It's all about Tumah. But what about Tumah?
What happens
Behavior.
to it?
Who?
Behavior.
It's life
Behavior of what?
cycle.
Tumah?
Tumah, how it flows between objects.
It's life cycle.
Good, sounds great. Let me give it a little polish. Taurus is all about the laws that govern the flow of the Tumah entity and how it relates to objects. See, Tumah is an entity, whatever the entity is. What are the laws that govern its flow? When does it flow? How? Where? What? When? And so on. And in what objects can it reside? And in what objects can it reside? You see, and then you see all the Masechtas. Kalim deals with the objects. Can Tumah reside in these objects? Do they have to have a size limit, a place, and so on?
Again, it's laws
That's what-
that govern the flow.
The laws that govern the flow of the Tumah entity and its relationship to objects. Because the Tumah entity is not just an entity in itself. It relates to objects. Objects become Tameh because the Tumah enters it, whatever that means, and so on. There you are. So you actually see tremendous, all this, the whole Torah really deals with these 6 ideas. Either it's talking about object usage, or it's talking about, either it's talking about objects. Now let's really generalize this. The Torah is either talking about objects, 1, activity, 2, ownership,
Property.
3,
It's a
the
firm.
negation of that, 4, all about the Beis Hamikdash, 5, which by the way is the relationship, because that's the relationship you have with the Baruch Shem, is through that. And 6 is the laws governing the flow of an entity called Tumah, which is the reverse of Kedusha. There you are.
That's Torah.
That's the whole Torah.
We know the whole trust now.
Are they
Astounding.
are they
what
each
I
one
just
as
do
important as the other?
is don't think fragmented. Always look to structure to see the connections, and then the whole Torah becomes incredible. Opens up.
You see that Noshim and Ezekim have a paired.
Noshim and Ezekim.
Ownership and its negation.
Yeah,
And Kedusha and the relationship, which is
It's
basically
antithesis.
are
Yeah.
Zerayim and Moed paired.
Well, in a certain sense, Zoram is about the objects, and Moed is about the activity. I mean, those are the fundamental units of the Bria.
So it's not a negation. It's not a
See the
negation.
objects and what?
But it's not in the same pattern as negation.
Yeah, no. There's no negation of that.
Are those 6
And
areas?
that's the whole Kala Terakula. Every mitzvah will fit into one of those 6 ideas.
Activity, that's moed.
That's my idea. Well, activity regulated by time. It's not just activity. Time regulates the activity. That's what the concept of a moed is. You know, so,
Wow.
hey, that's it.
We have accomplished today.
You have any idea, you know, what you accomplish, the stuff you hear tonight, you'll never hear anywhere else. It's much more than that. Besides, the main idea is to develop a different pattern of thinking. If you think this way, your conclusions are completely very different than what most people think. And the clarity is tremendous, and the retention is even greater. Because you've now clearly delineated every concept, so it's much easier to remember. We've organized Torah. So next week, we're back here, 8 o'clock. So what?
Sharp.
I have to begin sharp because it's 1:29. I gotta get out of here. Oh,
So we have
Kera boy sai.
next week we're starting from
What's your
what
name?
point?
First mission of
First mission.
What?
Main Masai.
You sure what?
Subai.
Masai?
Suba?
Oh, Damas.
What did you learn? How'd you find out?
Moshe.
Oh,
I came to your first one a few months ago when you were in
oh yeah. Wow. So what are we doing? Oh wow.
That's it. That's all here.
Leave it. People looking at it.
What's this for the CIA?
CIA, right. Central idea.
It's a secret meeting.
I was going to call a friend.
Married next door, right?